In the fall of 2023, I lost my nephew. He was killed by a hit and run driver. In the fall of 2025, I lost my mom after close to a decade. She finally succumbed to dementia. I shouldn't say finally, but you know what I mean. After losing my nephew and then my mother, something changed in my relationship with writing. I almost lost the words. I mean, words were still everywhere, obviously. I was editing them for other people. I was coaching other people through them, helping other writers figure out what they were trying to say. But when it came to getting my own words, it felt very different. I was struggling to write a play that was originally all in my head, and all I had to sit down to do was write it. And every time I did, or at least every time I tried to, it felt like struggle. It felt very unfamiliar. It felt somewhat painful even. So yeah, getting to my own words was very different. And that scared me more than I think I understood at the time. And even as I think about it now, and I'm already kind of getting emotional, and I promised myself I wouldn't do that. Um, but it scared me more than I think, more than thought I could ever feel about losing something that was such a part of me. It's hard to put it into words, right? Okay, it's hard to put it into words for the writer. That's funny. But nevertheless, it is. So, writing in my head is going to be a place where I tell the truth about the writing life, the good, the bad, the ugly of the ugliest, um, the times when words want to do something you're not trying to have them do, and all of the stuff in between. So, if you feel that, this is definitely the place where you want to be. I'm Emily Claudette Freeman. Everybody calls me Claudette, and this is Writing in My Head. So let me tell you that I'm familiar with grief. I've had grief of people passing away. I've had grief of walking away from relationships, romantically, professionally, platonically. I've had the grief of realizing that in some friendships I've been wonderfully kicked to the curb, right? And so I've known grief. I've known the grief of being in that place of striving and trying to do something and being successful, striving to be more successful and realizing that absolutely none of it feels good for you anymore, feels good to you anymore. And you really feel like the very thing that you're trying to achieve is fighting against you, right? So I've known grief. But when my nephew was killed, I think I experienced grief like I had never known. I don't even think grief is the word to describe it. It was a tearing apart of something in me because in our last conversation we talked a lot about my writing. We talked about his writing, and I said to him, I wish you would let me take some of your essays and your poetry and put them in a book." And so we talked about that. He seemed kind of excited about that, but hesitant about that too, because he said he kind of felt like people would judge the way that he thought, right? They would have all kinds of negative things to say about what he wrote and how he wrote it and want him to change things. And I did encourage him to just stay true to his words as I would with anybody, and to let him know that his words were powerful, but even more than that, they were a reflection of his story from his perspective. And I know that he needed to have that. And so at the time, I was preparing to go to two theater festivals, one in Portland and one in Atlanta. And so we also talked about that. And Something he said to me in that conversation about my writing stays with me now, and sometimes it haunts me, sometimes it encourages me, sometimes it challenges me. And he said to me, Auntie, do your own thing. Do your own thing. And he went on to tell me how I have always done for everybody else, regardless of how you define everybody else. And I always seem to put my work on the back burner. And as writers, can I say several things here? One, my nephew was right. Sometimes people read what you wrote and they have all kinds of opinions. They want, you know, they want to give you advice on how you should write, what you call to write, what is yours to write. And they may not like the words that you use in your writing. They may not like the way that you've chosen to say something, but it is still absolutely necessary that you create words in a way that they come to you, that you do not allow anybody to take your voice in your words, even in the editing process, right? Your words are your words and you should honor them. I don't care what anybody thinks, right? And the other thing is in holding your words sacred, keep your words, keep your work, keep your writing at the top of everything else going on in your life because I promise you, your words are absolutely a soothing balm. It is good medicine for the soul. And the thing that I realized when the words seem to have left me is my writing has been my therapy from the moment I picked it up as a child. It has been my therapy. It has been my way of observing life and life's participants. It's been my way of trying to figure out why people say the things that they say and why they say them when they say them, and watching the way words can bring life, words can bring death, as the Holy Bible says, but words can shift you into something that you're not supposed to be and as powerfully shift you into something you are supposed to be. So writing had been my therapy. For me, some of the best poetry I've ever written has been in times of anguish or distress or discomfort or in the midst of challenging life situations, right? And I go back and I read some of it now. And sometimes I do have that moment when I was like, girl, what were you going through? Girl, what were you thinking? And then at other times I read it and I say, yeah, I feel that. I get that. Right. And so your words are therapy for you and allow them to be. But the only way that you can allow them to be therapy for you is if you let them flow. If you let them flow, if you have a conversation with them, if you stay connected to them and allow them to show you not only who you are, but what you can learn from the thing that you're writing, even if that thing is fiction or plays, you can learn so much from the characters that you create. One of the things I learned in a playwriting course with playwright Tammy Ryan is that when you're writing, you kind of know whether or not a character's story or a character's pain is affecting you personally by where aches or discomfort shows up in your body when you're writing. And that resonated with me. And so when I began writing from then on, I would be very mindful of what was showing up in my body as I write. And so I encourage you to do that too. Um, but during that time, 2023 through 2025, um, yeah, all of that was it was like hiding from me, I would say. It was playing hide and go seek, and I didn't know where to go seek. I didn't know if they were ever going to come back to me. And I felt like a very large part of who I am was drifting away, was disappearing just like the words were, because I couldn't put a word after the. You know what I mean? And the is a word that you can put anything behind and it should begin something. But I couldn't put a word behind the, and that frightened me. When I sat down to look at my own work, I could read it and be like, yeah, okay, that's cool. I like that. And I would do that as a way to kind of work myself out of what I just thought was writer's block. But I quickly discovered that it was way more than that, because even after I was encouraged, even after I was invigorated, reading stuff that I'd already written, right? Going back to some of the notes from different writing classes I've taken and stuff, I'd open up that screen, or I'd pull out a notebook, grab a pen, get ready to write, and my brain would say, "No, I can't. It's too much right now. It's too much right now." And for that to live with me for 2 years made me question whether or not writing was the thing that I was supposed to be doing. But at the same time, concurrently to that, I realized that I was also struggling in my conversation and my communication with God. And you'll find I'll talk about God a lot. Not to disrespect you, it's just who I am, right? It's part of who I am, a very big part of who I am. And so I had to reach out for help. So I reached out to some people of prayer that I know and had them pray for me. And then as I began to get back that spiritual awareness, that spiritual life, that um, you are here for a purpose. You were created with some gifts. You were created with some talents. Then the words started to slowly come back, right? Um, Now, I'll be honest with you, coming into 2026, it was still a struggle for me. It was still a struggle for me, but I had friends who were encouraging me, and actually one of them, Terry, um, and I talked about, "Hey, you should start a Substack. Start a Substack. That way you'll get back into the flow of writing regularly." And can I tell you that that was a wonderful idea? Because when I wrote the first episode of my Substack, Sweet Teas, something in me just came alive. Something in me just came alive. And Sweet Teas was not a new idea. It was an idea for something I wanted to write years ago. Um, and I happened to come across it looking for something. And I thought, okay, you know what? If I'm going to do a Substack, let's do short fiction. And so Sweet Teas was born. And it was the most beautiful birth because it brought me back. It literally took me to my words and put them back in my hand, and put them back in my mind, and put them back in my soul. And that's a beautiful thing. So if your words seem a bit elusive right now because you're going through a major life transition, you're going through a major loss, a major medical diagnosis, what I would say to you is to just keep talking to them, keep inviting them to come, keep praying for them to come in your own way, and trust that they absolutely will. All right? Listen, keep writing, keep honoring your words, keep holding sacred the stories that you are called to write. And I know that you will be okay. I'm Emily Claudette Freeman, and this has been Writing in My Head. I will talk to you next week.